Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm TrueWords, and I hope you're all doing well. Today, in the next episode of our storytelling saga series, we're going to be covering the Monomyth, or the hero's journey. Now, the Monomyth is a template for which you can create other stories based off of. So many other adventure stories have been based off of this template. The Monomyth, or the hero's journey, is based off of a man's work named Joseph Campbell, who wrote about it in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Now, basically, what Joseph Campbell did in his book was describe all the different elements that he saw that were so similar through adventure stories, with heroes and fighting evil and coming back home with some sort of treasure. Anyway, he basically found very common elements between all of these different things and compressed them down into 3 different acts with 17 steps. Now, when we're going to be covering the Monomyth, we're going to be using a much more condensed version, which was created by a man named Christopher Vogel. He was a big-time Hollywood executive who worked for Disney, Fox, Warner Brothers, a bunch of different places. But basically, he compressed it down into 12 different steps. And that's what we're going to be covering today, the hero's cycle, the hero's journey, the Monomyth. Okay, so before we start explaining what happens in this Monomyth template, I need to explain that there are 2 different worlds using this kind of template. There's the ordinary world, the world that is familiar, the world that our hero lives in every day up until this one point, the world that he is most familiar with. And then there's the special world, the world that is new, that is fantastical, that has all of these adventures going on in it. The one that our hero will be going off into for his own adventure. So we need to clarify that there are 2 different worlds. Okay, so our story based off of the Monomyth is going to start with Act 1, the departure. And in this act we have 5 different steps. Step 1 being the ordinary world. Now our hero is shown to our audience in this ordinary world, and he is somewhat uncomfortable there. He's fidgety. He has some sort of calling for a greater purpose. Maybe he's a farmer and he wants to go out there and be a soldier and do something more with his life. Maybe he has some responsibilities at home, but he'd really like to be somewhere else doing something else as an artist or as some sort of do-gooder or what have you. Step 1 shows us where he is in this ordinary world. Step 2 is the call to adventure. Now our hero, being in this ordinary world, being in this uncomfortable spot wherever he is, feels this, he either feels internally this call to go out and have adventure for a specific reason, or this need to just leave where he is and to go out and find adventure. Or there's an external pressure telling him that he needs to go out there. Maybe there's some sort of problem in the next town over. Maybe the world is in calamity and our hero has the feeling to go out and save the world from whatever is happening. This is that call to adventure. Step 3 is the refusal of the call. Now, whether it's from within some sort of self-doubt that our hero has, maybe he wants this adventure so badly, but he knows that he has other responsibilities at home, especially if he's a farmer. He needs to take care of his family, he needs to take care of his crops. He finds some excuse from within to refuse the call. Or it could be from an external pressure. Someone else, maybe his family, is telling him that he can't do it. He has responsibilities at home. If he goes out, he'll be killed. Or some sort of external force tells him not to go, to refuse the call to adventure. Our 4th step is meeting with a mentor. Now this is some wise old adventurer, maybe a wizard, maybe a retired soldier, maybe the past hero who somehow finds our hero in the ordinary world and begins to teach him his ways, whether it be fighting, combat, or art, or he teaches him something that is vital to what he needs for this adventure. He passes down his knowledge, his wisdom, his advice. He gives the hero a reason to go out there and take the call up for adventure. And our final step in Act 1 is the departure from the ordinary world and crossing the threshold into the special world. This is where our hero has finally come up with the courage to leave his ordinary world and to go out and begin his adventure, to cross the threshold, whether if it's a certain trial, or whether if it's literally a geographic location that he's going to. Somehow, some way, he is crossing the threshold and beginning his adventure. Which brings us to Act 2, the initiation. Now, the initiation has 4 parts to it, starting with Step 6, which are the tests, allies, and enemies. Now, this is the part in the story where our hero begins his initial tests in the new special world, where he's going to find what his strengths and weaknesses are, but also, and more importantly, he's going to find which side he belongs to. He's going to find out who his allies are, who his enemies are, who's he going up against. These are the sort of things that he is going to discover in the special world. He's going to find new friends, perhaps, newfound abilities, but he's also going to find out who he's going up against, who his enemies are, who the evil dark lord is, whoever it might be. Anyway, that's Step 6. Now the next step, Step 7, is the approach to the innermost cave. Now, it's not a literal cave that they're talking about, but it's the hero and his allies preparing themselves for the big challenge, the big fight that's going to happen in this special world. It could be in a geographically dark place, like the evil land in which the enemy lies. It could be a literal cave in which they have decided to go venture into to find a certain treasure or some sort of elixir to bring back to the ordinary world. But in order to do that, they know that there is an enemy inside that they must defeat. So Step 8 is the ordeal. This is usually near the middle of the story, where the hero and the allies face up their biggest threat yet. The hero is facing his greatest fears. There could be death involved. And he fights the enemy, the dark forces, and his mettle is put to the test in this ordeal. Step 9, the final step of this act, is the reward. The hero and his allies overcome the ordeal and receive their reward, whether it's an elixir, whether it's a person who was trapped, or some sort of knowledge that they've gained. They've finally gotten it from the innermost cave. Which then brings us into Act 3, which is the return. Now that our hero has gotten over this ordeal with his allies and has finally retrieved the reward, they're now headed back home, which is Step 10, the road back. Now our hero and his allies, with their reward in hand, are headed back to the ordinary world, whether if it's to bring prosperity, to enlighten the people, or to save them from some sort of horrible darkness that has come over the land. The road back is them overcoming obstacles and heading back home. Usually there's some sort of chase scene involved. Maybe the ordeal that they had overcome wasn't quite 100% dealt with and is coming back after them as they head back home. Step 11 is the resurrection. Now this is usually the climax of the story. Right before the hero and his allies can get back home, there's another great ordeal that they have to go through. The biggest one that they've had yet, even more so than the ordeal before. Usually there's some sort of death involved, and through some sort of sacrifice, either on the hero's part or someone else's, the hero is usually purified and cements his allegiance in this special world. He defines who he is in this moment. It's usually the righteous do-gooder type of role. This is where that is extremely defined. And the last step is the return with the reward, usually with the person that they have saved, or the famed elixir, or the treasure. This is where the hero, finally overcoming all of those challenges, suffering, sacrificing, maybe they have lost a few allies along the way, they have finally did it. They've overcome all the challenges. They've defeated the enemy, and they've returned home with their treasure, with their reward, with their elixir, and they can finally bring prosperity and peace to the land, and everything ends happily ever after, they might say. Anyway, guys, that is the 12 steps of the hero's journey, or the Monomyth. Now, again, we were using a different model from the original Joseph Campbell's 17-step model, but it generally fits the same criteria. In fact, it's probably a little more broad than the original one, and so can fit more stories into that. But it's a very common template. A lot of people have used it. Some of your favorite stories may even be from it. And in fact, next episode, we're going to compare one of my favorite movies of all time to this template and actually show that it's not very original. Because while it may have been a great story, you could kind of predict what was going to happen. So, that's that. Anyway, guys, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know in the comments. Go ahead and leave this a like. If you'd like to subscribe, that would be great. You don't have to, though, but I would recommend it if you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing. Anyway, guys, thank you so much again for watching. Now, as in fashion, I have a long blooper reel at the end of this. I'm not a professional, so I make mistakes from time to time. Anyway, here's my mistakes. Sorry. Breathe. Okay, try again. Sorry about that. That was a stopwatch. Okay. Ha, 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 ha. Stop. Stop. Okay. Going to start with Act 1, the initiation. No, that's not right. This step. Dark spot. It's just something. Something. Let me look at it real quick. I got this. Whew. I've got it this time. I've got it. Okay, that's enough.